Thanks, Sion and Srijan, for inviting me and giving this opportunity to talk this mini course. One is that first two lectures will be on subfactor and second two will be planar algebra. That motivation of planar algebra came from subfactor. But as there are various audiences have various background, like from some even undergraduate students are there, so I will do this. So if you can always ask me any questions, just stop me. So references are this one. First, this is from V.S. Sundar, function analysis, and uh, another one is Stratila and Jetsudo, lectures on von Neumann algebras. So, and the main things of von Neumann algebra are coming from these four papers on rings of operator by Murray and von Neumann. It is in three papers are, I think first one, third one, and fourth one are in Annals of Maths, and second one in Transactions of AMS. So these are the references. Now, so what is a normed algebra? Normed algebra is nothing but a norm space, A naught, which satisfies these properties that there exists a multiplication, xy going to x dot y. And this multiplication satisfies these usual properties that associativity, distributivity, and submultiplicativity of norm. That is norm xy less than norm x times norm y. And a Banach algebra is a norm algebra which is complete as a norm space. Okay. So next we define a C-star algebra. A C-star algebra is a Banach algebra A which is equipped with an involution, which is a map from A to A, x going to x star. It is like the boundary linear operator on a Hilbert space. We have adjoint operator. Similarly, it is an abstract, a sister algebra is an abstract Banach algebra, which has this involution, and this satisfies these properties. First one is x y star equals y star x star for all x and y in A. Second one, alpha x plus y, this star equals alpha bar x star plus y star. Can you see my video?
Yeah. Every, yeah,
Oh,
it's clear.
so this is alpha in any scalar and xy is in A. And third property, these are all like in B of H, all these properties hold. So third one is this involution, x star star equals x for all x in A. And last one is the most important, norm of x star x equals norm of x square. And this is called C star identity. So in this lecture, all the sister algebra I will assume to be unitary. And you may know that norm of in fact one star also same as one. Typical example of sister algebra is B of H, where some calls it L of H. I will stick to this notation, B of H, boundary linear operator on Hilbert space. And this is highly non-commutative. Also, it is obvious that if you take any A, which is a closed self-adjoint subalgebra. Self-adjoint means if X is in A, then X star will be also in A. So any closed self-adjoint subalgebra of B of it is trivially a sister algebra. Now, another example is C of X, where X is a compact Hausdorff space. And this is pointwise multiplication. And yeah, and of course, this SUPNO. Then it is this is a commutative star algebra. And conversely, any, as I already said, that my C-star algebra will be always unital. Any commutative C-star algebra will be isometrically to C of X for some compact Hausdorff space. This is Gelfand's famous theory, duality theory. In this sense, some people call C-star algebra theory as non-commutative topology. And now we have defined C-star algebra. Now we have to define a representation of a C-star algebra A is a pair pi h, such that pi is a map from A to B of H, such that these properties hold. Pi of xy equals pi x. This is an algebra homomorphism. Pi x, pi y for all x, y in A. Second, pi of 1 is 1. Third one is pi of x whole, pi of x star equals pi of x whole star. Note that this star is the star of the abstract C-star algebra, but this right hand side star is the adjoint of B of B. So this is the representation of a C-star algebra. Now question is when these two C-star algebras are equivalent, two representations are equivalent. So two representations pi h and sigma k are said to be equivalent if there exists a unitary operator from h to k such that this pi and sigma intertwine. That means u pi x equals sigma x u for all x in A. So we don't distinguish between these two representations. Now, fact is that given a representation pi h and a unit vector psi in h, one associates a map from A to C. How? Just define phi of A equals pi of A xi xi. So this is clearly a phi is a linear function. Now this has this interesting property that phi of A star A equals pi of A star A xi xi, which is by definition because it is a star algebra homomorphism. So ultimately it will be pi of A whole star, pi of A xi and xi. So this is nothing but norm of pi A xi whole square, because pi star will go that side. So this is positive. So this type of property are called the positive linear functional. That if phi of A star of A greater than 0, we call that map phi positive. And another property of this map is that phi of 1 equals pi of 1 xi xi, which is nothing but norm, because pi of 1 is 1. So this is norm xi square, which is again 1. So one definition now, immediately one can define. So a state on a C-star algebra A is a positive linear function. So given any representation pi h and a unit vector, one can define a state according to this definition. Now converse, you can ask whether the converse is true. That means here you have given a representation, we have defined a state. So given any state on a sister algebra, can you define somehow a representation? So this is the celebrated GNS construction. This is Gelfand, Neumark, and Seagal construction. So this is the statement. For a sister algebra A and a state phi in A, there exists a triple. Denote this by pi phi, h phi, psi phi, such that these properties hold. First one is pi phi from A to B of h phi is a representation. Second one is interesting, that pi phi of A xi phi, such that A is varying over all A. So this set is dense in the Hilbert space H phi. We call psi phi as cyclic vector. And also this is unit vector. And third one is that phi is recoverable from the representation. So phi of x equals pi phi of x xi phi, comma xi phi for all x in A. So see, this is the exact converse of this guy. Here we have from pi we have defined this this linear functional pi is psi psi. Now from this phi we also now recover this. This statement is little difficult. This and converse, not converse. Furthermore, given any other triple pi, h, and psi, which satisfies 1, 2, 3, there exists a unitary u from h to h phi, such that u pi x equals pi phi x u. I hope this is correct. Pi is from h to a to h, and then u will be h. This okay. So this is x is in a, and also u xi will go to xi phi. So this is uniqueness, that only there exists unique such triple, basically up to isomorphism of representation. Now I will just sketch the proof. This is the most important theorem in this today's talk actually. And also this GNS construction will be required in 2-1 subfactor theory also. So just understand this very well. First thing is that like if you have a group, then always we'll try to act that group on itself by left product. Similarly, given a sister algebra, we'll try to act that sister algebra on itself by left multiplication. But unfortunately, that is not a Hilbert space. Sister algebra is not a Hilbert space. So, but we need a Hilbert space because you have to define a representation. So somehow we have to define an inner product. So what shall I do? First, we will define some ideal. N phi is the set of all x in the sister algebra such that phi of x star x is 0. Then consider A mod n phi and define a form that A plus N phi, comma B plus N phi. Just define this as phi of B star of A. Right. Then one can check that call this. So one can check exercise that this one is a genuine inner product. And as soon as we have an inner product, we can define the completion and call this Hilbert space as H phi, that A mod N phi completion. Call this as H phi. So we got H phi. Now we have to define the representation. Now we'll go to that Kelly's theorem type trick that A will act on by left multiplication. So given any x in A, define L of x, L for left, L of x from first defined from A mod N phi to A mod N phi by L of x, y plus N phi equals xy plus N phi. So now next thing that this extends to a map from H phi to H phi. This is not trivial actually. Main thing is here one thing one should notice that phi, the definition of phi, there was what is that this is just a positive linear functional. This is a positive linear functional. Then it is a miracle that it will be automatically bounded. So for that, you have to define spectrum of an operator and all those things. I will not go to that. So any positive linear functional will be automatically bounded. So using that, one can define a map from H phi to H phi. So call this map as pi phi from H phi to H phi. So this, what I meant that this Lx extend to a map from H phi to H phi. In other words, Lx belonging to B of H phi. So next, define pi phi from A to B of H phi by pi phi of x equals L of x. So is there any question up to this? I mean, this might be heavy. In chat, somebody has. Okay, yeah. Is there any question? Okay, so if not, then let us continue. Pi phi, we have defined pi phi. Also, we have defined H phi. Now, we have to only define psi phi. This just define like 1 plus N phi because our sister algebra is unital. So take that one and equivalence class containing 1, call it psi phi. So you can easily check that this pi phi is a representation. And also this psi phi is a unit vector. That is also trivial to check because what is the psi phi square? This is 1 plus N phi, comma 1 plus N phi. So which is nothing but phi of 1 star 1, which is again phi of 1, 1. So this is really a unit vector. And also this is cyclic because this thing, pi phi of A psi phi, this is nothing but A mod N phi, which is clearly dense in H phi. So this is cyclic. Now only remaining thing is to check that it is enough to check now that phi of x equals pi phi of x psi phi psi phi. So this is also basic calculation. So this one RHS equals what? L of x 1 plus N phi, comma 1 plus N phi. So this is x plus n phi, comma 1 plus n phi, which is phi of x. So we have proved everything that the phi is a representation, psi phi is a unit cyclic vector, and phi is recoverable from the representation. Uniqueness is very trivial exercise. I mean, just total set will go to another total set, and from there one can cook up a unitary. I'll skip that. So this you just read this from the first reference I told, Sundar function analysis book, or any other operator algebra operator theory book you can get GNS. So this has an this GNS construction has a very beautiful corollary with some work, of course, that for any sister algebra A, there exists a Hilbert space H such that A is isometrically isomorphic to a self-adjoint sub-algebra of B of H. Notice that in the beginning I have told that any self-adjoint sub-algebra of B of H is a sister algebra. And here it is saying that conversely, given any abstract sister algebra, one can cook up a Hilbert space such that it is isomorphic to some closed sub-algebra. So these two definitions, one is abstract definition of sister algebra, another one this concrete definition that it is concretely realizable in a Hilbert space. These two definitions are equivalent. Now you can, if you don't understand all these things, just you can take this as a definition of sister algebra, that it is a some closed sub algebra of B of H which is self-adjoint. This is the definition of sister algebra. But main problem of this this unit, the non-closed sub algebra, is that this unit ball is not compact, so it is too big to do the right analysis. So we have much more nicer topologies. These are called operator topologies on B of H. So these are certain locally convex topologies. So a topology, you recall that a topology generated by a family of seminorms P alpha, some index Z, is a locally convex topology. So to define a topology generated by seminorm, you do exactly like this norm actually. So you just consider some unit, some balls around some point, and these are the sub-basic open. Anyway, there is some easier description that any net xi converging to x if and only if p alpha of xi minus x converging to 0. That is the topology generated by seminorm. If you don't know net, then just take this as a sequence. So, what is the topology generated by seminorm? It is just it is enough to say when a net will converge. So this net will converge if and only if this holds for all alpha. Now, so on B of H, we have to define certain locally convex topologies. So for that, we have to define some seminorms. First one is SOT topology. SOT means strong operator topology. That is, so fix some vector psi in H, define a seminorm E xi of x equals norm of xi for all x in B of H. So you can easily check that this is a seminorm. So topology generated by these seminorms is called strong operator topology. This has a serious drawback is that adjoint operator is not continuous. This you can easily check by taking that shift operator on little L2n. That adjoint operator will not be continuous. So we have another locally convex topology on B of H called WOT topology. So here we have to fix two vectors, psi and eta in H, define a family of seminorms by P xi eta of X equals summation. Not summation. There only one vector. So this is X xi eta for all X in B of A. This is also a seminorm. And here this adjoint operator will be continuous. This is called weak operator topology. So topology generated by this P xi eta, this seminorm xi eta is WOT, called WOT topology. Now the most interesting topology is sigma WOT topology. I'll explain why this is the most interesting and most important actually. So you fix a sequence of vector which is square summable. So this is one sequence, another sequence of vectors n equals 1 to infinity in H, such that summation norm xi n square is less than infinity and summation this one is also finite. Then define P xi n eta n of X is summation X xi n comma eta n. You can easily check that this is also summable, this one. So this is also a semi-norm, that P xi n eta n. And topology generated by this family is called sigma W, sigma for the summation, sigma WOT topology. Why this is most important? Because this is a fact that B of H has a p-dual. That means it is there exists a Banach space, call it BH lower star, whose dual is isomorphic to B of H. So this has natural weak star topology. With this identification, B of H will have a weak star topology. It turns out that this weak star topology and sigma WOT topology are same. And therefore, by Banach-Alaoglu, unit ball of B of H is not that big. It is compact. Fine. So what we have done that first we have seen that BH, the norm topology is not good enough because its unit ball is not compact. Therefore, we have defined various locally convex topologies, and in the sigma WOT topology, unit ball will be compact. Now comes a major theorem, double commutant theorem by von Neumann in one of the annals paper actually. So it says that the theorem, double commutant theorem, says that for a unital self-adjoint sub-algebra of B of H, the following are equivalent. If you have any question in this locally convex topology, please ask. Okay, so first one is, so for a unital self-adjoint sub-algebra M of B of H, the following are equivalent. That M is SOT closed. Second one, M is WOT closed. Third one, M is sigma WOT closed. And fourth is M equals M double commutant, double prime. So given any set, I will define what is prime. Given any subset, S subset of B of H, S prime means set of all X in B of H which commutes with all elements in S. And of course, double prime means prime, then take another prime. This is a major theorem. Even for finite dimension, it is difficult to prove. This is why this is important and interesting, because these are topological properties. And this is purely algebraic. I will not go to the proof. You can see this in Sundar's book or Satila's book. You can check this. Definition. So, a subalgebra M which satisfies any one of the above equivalent conditions is called von Neumann algebra or W star algebra. So typical example is B of H. It is highly non-commutative. In fact, one can check that center of B of H, which is in fact B of H prime. This is nothing but a scalar. So center of a von Neumann algebra, by that I mean M prime intersect M. By the way, from the definition, it is trivial that if M is a von Neumann algebra, its prime is also a von Neumann algebra, because you will just do double prime. So it is double prime, then again prime. So M double prime is M, then M prime. So if M is a von Neumann algebra, M prime will be also von Neumann algebra. So B of H is a non-commutative von Neumann algebra. Now, another example is L infinity X mu. This is the another extreme. This is commutative von Neumann algebra, because you can check that L infinity. I mean, I have to mention what is the Hilbert space. So it is L2 X mu, and of course this is by MF multiplication operator. That M of F G is F of G. And then one can check that L infinity X mu's prime will be L infinity X mu. In other words, center of L infinity X mu will be L infinity X mu. So this is commutative C-star algebra. And conversely, any commutative C-star algebra is isomorphic to L infinity X mu. That is why some people say von Neumann algebra theory is a non-commutative measure theory. Like C-star algebra theory is a non-commutative topology. This is non-commutative measure theory.
You mean any von Neumann algebra, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks. Any commutative C-star algebra is C of X. Sorry. Thanks. Okay, so I will immediately define something, because B of H, we have noticed this property that center is trivial. So this property is called definition. A factor.
And
M.
how does the proof work?
This one.
Yeah.
I mean,
like
this
C-star algebra.
You need no, it is not like sister. You require direct integral theory actually.
Oh.
So
what is the X?
That this is
what is the X? If you start with a
X, this is not that it can be represented under some L2 X mu. There will be some measure space X mu such that it will be isomorphic. It is not saying that it sits as some subset of B of L2 X mu and as a multiplication operator. I'll not go through that. That proof requires direct integral theory. So, fact is that any von Neumann algebra can be decomposed as a direct integral of factors. Using that, one can prove all these things. For proof, you can see Takesaki, I think. But one thing you should notice that this is not just subset of B of L2 X mu and as a multiplication operator. This is not true. But this is not just not important for this purpose. You just know this fact that it's sufficient.
So
So something else
I don't get what you say when you say it's not B of L2 inside.
I'm saying that L infinity x mu
Yeah.
can be represented as B of L to x mu, right?
Yes.
F going to M. This is not saying that you will get some L infinity x mu such that it is represented as this one. This statement is just saying that any commutative von Neumann algebra will be as a von Neumann algebra isomorphic to some L infinity x mu.
Yeah, but then
So,
L infinity x mu is inside B of L2, right?
No. This may be inside, but this may not be like F going to MA.
Huh?
This may not always as M going to MA, right? L infinity x mu, you can see it in B of L to x mu in various ways. Okay, so this is just a statement that any commutative von Neumann algebra is L. I mean, just don't bother with this. I think this is not very important for this part. Fine. Now I want to say, well, I forgot something. Okay. So first I have to define a factor. First, just note that B of H is this property, that center of BH is trivial. So a factor M of B of H is a von Neumann algebra such that center is trivial. So typical example is B of H. Now, why this factor is important? Because this is a building block of von Neumann algebra theory. That any von Neumann algebra can be written as a direct integral of factors. So I will not go through that all this direct. This is all the boring things that it is direct integral theory and all this. But for finite dimension, it is just saying that a von Neumann algebra, finite dimensional von Neumann algebra, is just direct sum of matrix algebras. MNK of C. This is the direct integral definition, turns out to be in the finite dimensional case. Okay. Now we need more definitions of factors. So classic example is group von Neumann algebra. So throughout this note, G is a countable discrete group. And define lambda from G to B of L to G by lambda of S delta T equals delta ST, where delta T is the canonical basis of L to G. Here E is the identity of the group G. Okay. Now one can check that lambda S star will be lambda of S inverse. Therefore, lambda S is a unitary operator. Lambda S is a unitary operator. And one can check also that lambda is a representation. This lambda is called left regular representation. Similarly, one define rho from G to B of L to G by rho of S delta T equals delta T S inverse, where of course ST is in G. And as usual, rho S is unitary and rho is a representation. Rho is called the right regular representation. Now we define L of G as lambda G and SOT closure inside B of L to G. So see, lambda is a map from G to B of L to G. So we are taking lambda G and then taking closure in the strong operator topology. And by double commutant theorem, this is same as taking sigma WT topology or WT topology. This is called left group von Neumann algebra. Similarly, R of G define rho of G SOT closure, which is a subset of B of L2 of G. And this is called right group von Neumann algebra. Now we'll see that when this LG and RG are factors and various nice properties. So here I should mention that they are measured open problem.
So it will be
Whether
same taking double commutant also, right?
Yeah, by double commutant theorem. So this is a major open problem is that F of L of Fm, whether this is isomorphic to L of Fn or not, for n not equal to. This is called free group factor problem. And Voiculescu has developed free probability theory to, among other reasons, he has developed free probability theory to tackle this problem. Okay. Now, various properties of L of G will check. First,
Excuse me, sir.
yeah.
Sir, this construction about group von Neumann algebras, is this construction work for more general groups?
I don't know much about this.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
One should be able to define, I think. I'll think about it. I don't know.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
I mean, usually group sister algebra is defined for any locally compact group, right?
But we won't get a von Neumann algebra in a similar way, right?
Yeah,
But if I want to get a von Neumann algebra out of a group?
So just take the group sister algebra and just take the double commutant. That will
Okay,
do.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay.
But when this will be a factor and all those things,
Yeah. That's
I don't know this.
different. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, von Neumann algebra even you can define in the same way. You know? That's L to G with respect to the hard measure, and then you can define regular representation, right regular representation, and then take the closure. You don't need to go to the sister algebra setting. No, you just take this one that definition.
So for discrete group, do they coincide, Jyotish Manda? Like if you take the sister algebra and take the double commutant, and if you define in the okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
but even for discrete group, there are huge open problems. So,
Okay.
and so we will see various properties of this group von Neumann algebra now. So first property is that lambda G subset of L of G subset of R of G prime and R of G subset L of G prime. This is some trivial calculation. Actually, it is enough to show that lambda S rho T equals rho T lambda S. left hand side is lambda S rho T. I have to act on some delta U. So this is lambda is delta UT inverse, which is delta SUT inverse, and which is same as this one. So this is trivial, that LG subset of R of G prime. Now, property 2, you just define TR from L of G to C by TR of X as X delta E delta E. So this TR of X, this, first of all, it is clear that it is sigma WT continuous. Next is that this is a state, TR is a state, and TR of XY equals TR of YX for all XY in L of G. So these are called tracial properties. So then this TR is called trace, in fact, tracial state. So how will prove it that there exists a trace? So sigma WT continuous, and as this is a state, these are trivial. So first we'll see why trace of XY equals trace of YX. Also, there is one thing is faithful. This is very important. So let us first take faithful. Faithful means we have to prove trace of X star X is 0. That will imply X equals 0. How will prove it? Let us see. So trace of X star X equals X star X delta E, which is nothing but X delta E square. So this is 0 from, so X delta is 0. From there we have to conclude that X is 0. So how will do that? So for all T, we have to prove X delta T is 0. So we have to prove X delta T is 0. But X delta T equals X rho T inverse delta E. And notice that X is in LG and rho T inverse is in RG. Therefore, by proposition 1, this LG and RG commutes. So this will be rho T inverse X delta. And this is 0. So X on any delta T is 0. Therefore, X is 0. And this type of things are called faithful property. That trace of X star X is 0 imply X is 0. Now we only need to prove that it is a tracial thing. So for that also it is easy. I will skip the proof. You have to just prove that trace of lambda S rho T equals trace of rho T lambda S, and just extend by the continuity. Now the most important property, that LG is a factor if and only if G is an ICC group. ICC means infinite conjugacy classes. That means so that for all S not equals identity, this conjugacy class TST inverse such that T varying over the group, this is infinite. There are many examples of ICC group. For example, free group with n greater than 2. This is an example of ICC group. I have 10 minutes. Maybe let us try this one. Can I take 10 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, so LG is a factor if and only G is ICC. I will prove first this direction. So suppose G is ICC.
So just a second. What are there other examples?
Yeah, you can take S infinity. That it just fixes the finitely many things in union of Sn in 1 to infinity.
Oh.
And also, this is a nice thing is that any finite index subgroup of ICC group is ICC.
Finite. Okay.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Now, suppose G is ICC. So we have to prove LG is the factor. So LG is the factor means we have to investigate its center. So suppose X is in LG, center of LG. Therefore, for all T in G, lambda T X, lambda T star should be X. Because you remember I told that lambda T, okay, I'm writing lambda of T as just lambda sub T. So lambda T is unitary, I told before. Therefore, it is in the center, so it will commute. X will go here, lambda T will come here, and it is unitary, so it will be true for all T in G. Now you have to notice that here I have proved that X delta is 0 imply X equals 0. That is very important. So this says that X going to X delta E. This is an injective map. So this is in LG and this is in L2 of G. So any element of LG can be identified with L2G by this because this is injective. And by this identification, lambda G will go to delta G. Therefore, any X can be written as G XG lambda of G, where XG of course in L2G by this identification. Now you just put this into here. So lambda T X lambda T star equals X. So summation G lambda T XG lambda G lambda T star lambda T X equals G of XG lambda G. Therefore, this is summation G XG lambda of TG T inverse equals just simple calculation, but it yields nice thing that it is constant on the conjugation. Therefore, for all T, we will just compare. Oh, something. So for all T, this is true that X TG T inverse equals X of G for all T. And this can never be true if it is ICC because X TG T inverse varying over T, this is in L2G. And if this is infinite conjugacy classes, then in the infinitely many places, this is XG. This is never possible unless XG is 0 for all G not equals to identity. Therefore, X is nothing but XE. So this is scalar. Therefore, we prove this one direction. Now, other direction is actually easier. So, LG, what we have proved that if G is ICC, then if ICC, LG is a factor. Now we have to prove if LG is a factor, G is ICC. So, if G is not an ICC group, then we have to prove that there is some element in the center of LG. Okay. So, suppose G is not ICC. Therefore, for all, there exists T naught not equals identity such that this set S T naught S inverse. This is a finite set. Finite set. Now you can easily check that this guy X naught equals summation over G in F lambda of G is in the center of LG. So that means LG is not a factor. Okay, so these are the properties we have proved. We have proved that L of G has a trace, faithful sigma WT continuous. So this sigma WT continuous means some people say normal. This is unfortunate terminology, bad terminology because there is a normal operator is there. So I will just say this is faithful sigma WT continuous, not normal maps. Faithful sigma WT continuous facial state. And also LG is a factor if and only if G is ICC. So we immediately write a definition that a type 2-1 factor. This is not historically correct way to define type 1 factor. For to define type 1 factor, one needs geometry of projections, Murray-von Neumann equivalence, all these things, and which is more natural. But this is not possible in this mini course to define like that. So I think this is the best way to define 2-1 factor in this mini course. So a type 2-1 factor is an infinite dimensional factor having a faithful normal racial state. So what we have proved that LG is an example of type 2-1 factor. So like if age is a subgroup of G, then LH can be thought of as a subset of L of G. Similarly, when define a subfactor, so a subfactor n subset of M is a type 2-1 factor. In my talk, all the factors will be type 1 factor. There are various other factors, type 3, type 2 infinity, type 1. I will not do all these. So sometimes I will just say it is a factor. By that I will mean type 1 factor. So if subfactor n subset of M is a type 2-1 factor such that identity of n equals identity of n. So like a group has an index. Similarly, in the next lecture, I will show that Von Jones, how he associated an index for a subfactor. Okay. So I finish it here. Thanks for your patience.